You don't actually miss the fuzzy tracking lines on a VHS tape. You miss the absolute certainty that the movie you were holding in your hands couldn't be edited, censored, or magically deleted by a streaming server while you slept. Think back to the weight of it, the solid, rectangular brick of black plastic. When you rented a movie or when you finally saved up enough to buy one, it belonged to you, or at least the experience of it belonged to you in that specific moment in time. You would push it into the machine, hear the heavy, satisfying mechanical clunk of the carriage engaging, and you knew exactly what was going to happen next. There was a beginning, a middle, and an end. There was boundaries. There was a physical reality to the entertainment that mirrored the physical reality of the living room you were sitting in. Today, we live in a world devoid of those boundaries. We are entirely untethered. As we look closely at why we crave physical media in 2026, we have to confront a deeply unsettling reality about our modern digital lives. You're likely watching this through a perfectly smooth piece of glass, a frictionless, sterile surface that holds the entirety of human culture, yet gives nothing back to your sense of touch. For the last analog generation, this shift hasn't just been a technological upgrade, it has been a quiet, psychological trauma. If you've been feeling an unexplainable sense of exhaustion lately, a persistent low-level anxiety when you sit down to relax at night, you are experiencing profound weight of digital impermanence, the licensing trap. This is a quiet, creeping dread that everything they own, movies, music, books, is just a revocable license on a server that can be censored, altered, or deleted overnight by a faceless corporation. When you purchase a digital movie today, you aren't buying a movie. You are buying a temporary agreement, a fragile line of code that can vanish the moment a streaming platform loses its distribution rights. You are building a massive library of ghosts. You are pouring your time, your money, and your emotional attachment into an invisible void, and your nervous system knows it. It feels the instability. It recognizes that the foundation of your modern entertainment is built on shifting digital sand, but it goes deeper than just ownership. We are currently living through an era defined by synthetic distrust, AI gaslighting. This is a pervasive 2026 exhaustion of never knowing if a photo, an article, or a video is real human art or sterile, algorithmic sludge generated by AI. Every single day, you are asked to parse reality from simulation. When you see a photograph online, your brain has to do a micro-calculation to determine if the lighting makes sense, if the hands look human, if the context is authentic. When you read an article, you wonder if a machine scraped it together in 3 seconds. This constant, subconscious vigilance is exhausting. It is one of the primary modern digital exhaustion symptoms that our generation is uniquely sensitive to, precisely because we remember a time when reality was simply real. You didn't have to question if the album cover in your hands was generated by an algorithm. You didn't have to wonder if the liner notes were hallucinated by a chatbot. To cope with this overwhelming digital fatigue, we tell ourselves stories. We cling to modern myths to justify the convenience of the digital age. The biggest lie we tell ourselves is, having millions of songs and movies instantly available gives me ultimate freedom. We celebrate the infinite buffet, but the truth is entirely the opposite. The human brain was never evolved to process infinite choice. Instead of freedom, infinite availability causes paralyzing choice paralysis. It fundamentally devalues the art because it transforms a carefully crafted album or film into disposable, cheap content. We also comfort ourselves with another massive illusion. We tell ourselves that the cloud is forever. My digital libraries and memories are totally safe. We upload our family photos, our favorite songs, our entire digital footprint into the ether, assuming it is permanent. But the truth is that server wipes, company bankruptcies, and retroactive censorship make the cloud highly volatile. It is the most fragile storage medium humanity has ever widely adopted. When you sit on your couch at the end of a long workday, remote in hand, staring into the glowing blue light of your television, you might find yourself asking a very specific question. Why do I feel so overwhelmed and numb when looking at streaming menus? The answer lies in the biology of expectation and reward. When you look at a wall of 50,000 movies on a streaming app, your brain experiences a massive spike in cognitive load. You are not just picking a movie, you are rejecting 49,999 other movies. You are plagued by the fear of making the wrong choice, of wasting your limited free time on something mediocre, when something perfect might be just one swipe away. This leads to the next logical question. Is subscription fatigue a real psychological condition? Yes, it is. It is the cumulative exhaustion of managing a dozen different digital toll booths just to access culture. It is the mental drain of tracking passwords, price hikes, and shifting catalogs. It is a feeling of being bled dry by microtransactions for access to a library you will never truly possess. And it affects how we experience joy. Why does listening to Spotify feel less satisfying than playing a CD? It is because the friction has been removed. Friction, counterintuitively, is the very thing that creates value. When you can skip a track with a half-second swipe of your thumb, you never give the slow, challenging songs a chance to grow on you. You never experience an album as a cohesive, structured journey. You consume it as a fragmented, algorithmic playlist. By the end of this journey today, you are going to discover a massive psychological reframe. You will understand that craving physical tapes and discs isn't just about missing your youth. You will understand the biological imperative behind the psychological benefits of physical media and why your brain is actively trying to save you from the digital abyss. Swipe, click, scroll. We have 50 million songs in our pockets right now, yet our generation has never felt so musically starved. Here is a dark psychological reason why your brain secretly prefers a heavy, imperfect clunk of a cassette deck over the infinite void of Spotify. To understand this starvation, we have to look at how we consume information. Consuming infinite digital media is like trying to drink water from a high-pressure fire hose. It blasts right past you, leaving you battered but still deeply thirsty. Physical media is drinking from a heavy ceramic mug. It has weight, it has limits, and it actually quenches you. There's an entire psychological universe contained within the physical limits of a CD, a vinyl record, or a VHS tape. When you buy a CD, you are making commitment. Let's paint a picture of a memory you likely have. Imagine a weathered hand, maybe yours, maybe an older sibling's, eagerly peeling the stubborn, incredibly annoying plastic strip off the top of a brand new CD. You remember that struggle. Then, the deeply satisfying crack of opening the plastic jewel case. The smell of the freshly printed paper booklet inside. The precise, mechanical click as you push the disc into the tray of a boombox or a stereo system. That was an event. That was a ritual. Now, cut to the modern equivalent. A thumb mindlessly swiping and scrolling through a sterile, endless Netflix menu. The room is dark, illuminated only by the harsh, blue-tone glow of the television. The eyes are glazed over. The face is blank. There is no anticipation. There is no ritual. There is only a desperate, numb search for the next hit of dopamine to stave off the silence of the room. This contrast perfectly illustrates the devastating reality of our digital lives. We are asking profound questions about our sanity. We are asking, how is AI-generated media affecting our perception of reality? The effects of AI-generated media on the brain are still being mapped by neurologists, but the early data is alarming. When we are constantly exposed to hyperrealistic, digitally fabricated faces, voices, and environments, the brain's threat detection centers go into overdrive. We lose our baseline for truth. If you cannot trust your own eyes and ears when watching a video on your phone, a subtle, chronic paranoia begins to set in. You become unmoored. You lose your psychological gravity. This is exactly why am I suddenly craving the old technology one grew up with. It is not because the 1980s or 1990s were a utopia. They were deeply flawed decades. It is not because a cassette tape objectively sounds better than a lossless digital audio file. It doesn't. You are craving old technology because it is immutable. It cannot be altered by a software update. It cannot be deepfaked. It represents a hard, undeniable physical truth, which brings us to a fascinating neurobiological question. Does holding a physical object actually change how the brain processes memory? Absolutely. Human memory is intrinsically linked to spatial awareness and tactile sensation. We evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to interact with the physical world. When you read a physical book, your brain maps the information spatially. You remember that a specific plot twist happened on the left-hand page, roughly halfway through the thickness of the book. Your fingers feel the weight of the pages read versus the pages remaining. When you read a book on a Kindle or an iPad, all spatial landmarks are erased. Every page exists in the exact same physical space as the last. It is a flat, infinite loop. The brain struggles to anchor the memory because there is no physical geography to attach it to. This tactile anchoring was incredibly important for our specific generation. How did physical media act as an anchor for latchkey kids? If you grew up in the 70s or 80s, there's a very good chance you came home from school to an empty house. Both parents were working, or you were raised by a single parent who was out trying to make ends meet. The house was quiet. Sometimes it was too quiet. For a latchkey kid, physical media wasn't just entertainment. It was companionship. It was a grounding mechanism. When you walked into that empty house, the first thing you did was turn on the television, or put a tape in the stereo, or load a cartridge into a Nintendo. The physical act of interacting with the machine, of handling the media, established your presence in the home. The word the VCR, the glow of the CRT television, the stack of cassette tapes on your bedroom floor. These were the physical boundaries of your safe space. They were yours. They belonged to you. And understanding this completely shatters the illusion of digital ownership. When a latchkey kid arranged their tapes on a shelf, they were building a physical manifestation of their identity. You could walk into a teenager's bedroom in 1989, look at their walls and their music collection, and know exactly who they were without them speaking a single word. Today, our identities are hidden behind passwords and lock screens, buried in algorithmic playlists that we don't even curate ourselves. We rely on machines to tell us who we are and what we like. This reliance is exactly why streaming causes decision fatigue. The algorithm is designed to keep you on the platform as long as possible, not to give you a satisfying conclusion. It presents an endless parade of options, forcing your brain to constantly evaluate, reject, and reconsider. In response to this exhaustion, many people try to find solutions, but they almost always fall into a tragic dilemma. They opt for the trivial surface fix, while completely ignoring the deep psychological loss. The trivial surface fix looks like this: buying vintage-looking digital skins to their music apps, changing their smartphone screens to grayscale, or setting digital app limits. People think that if they just make their modern technology look a little more retro, or they download a screen time tracker, they will suddenly feel better. They believe the lie that I just need a better digital curation app to organize my life and reduce my screen time. They're trying to cure digital burnout with more digital tools. But this entirely ignores the massive, catastrophic deep loss. The deep loss is a complete death of the ritual of commitment. We have lost the psychological discipline of paying attention to one imperfect movie or album from start to finish simply because we invested physical effort into putting it in the machine. By gaining the ability to skip everything, we lost the ability to absorb anything. When you bought an album on cassette, you listened to it, even the bad songs, even the weird, experimental tracks in the middle. You listened because fast-forwarding was imprecise and annoying. You listened because you spent $15 of your hard-earned allowance on it. You sat through the friction, and because you sat through the friction, you absorbed the art. Sometimes, a song you hated on the first listen became your favorite song of all time by the 10th listen. Today, if a song doesn't hook the listener in the first 3 seconds, they swipe. We have conditioned our brains to demand instant gratification. And in doing so, we have sacrificed the slow, simmering reward of true artistic appreciation. We are tumbling endlessly through the analog void, a deep psychological emptiness created by the removal of physical friction from our daily lives. We are building an archive for the last analog generation. If you belong here, you are welcome to subscribe. In an era drowning in synthetic AI video and deepfakes, reality itself feels slippery, but you can't deepfake a scratch CD. For Gen X, hoarding physical media isn't just a nostalgic midlife crisis. It's an unconscious survival reflex to ground our nervous systems. Mainstream internet advice will tell you that if you feel overwhelmed, you should take a 48-hour digital detox. They will tell you to lock your phone in a drawer for the weekend. Or, if they discuss physical media at all, they will say that collecting vinyl records is cool because analog audio objectively sounds warmer. But this completely misses a profound psychological reality of what is actually happening. Owning physical media in 2026 is an act of deep defiance. It is a vital mechanism for somatic nervous system regulation. When you are constantly bombarded by the infinite, weightless, frictionless digital world, your nervous system becomes dysregulated. You are living in a state of hyperarousal, constantly anticipating the next notification, the next email, the next algorithmic recommendation. Your brain is trapped in a simulated reality where nothing has physical consequences. The physical act of walking over to a shelf, selecting a movie, sliding a VHS tape into a VCR, or dropping a needle onto a vinyl record forces a physical commitment threshold. You cannot simply swipe away after 3 seconds. The machine requires your participation. It forces your body to move in physical space. It forces your brain to slow down and align with the linear, unchangeable reality of the spinning disc or the rolling tape. By engaging with an object that has a fixed beginning, middle, and end, you are entirely bypassing the dopamine-driven decision fatigue that plagues the modern streaming experience. You are using a physical object to tell your nervous system, "We are here. We are safe. We are committing to this one singular experience, and the infinite digital void cannot reach us right now." This is the answer to the question, what is the psychology behind the massive 2026 physical media resurgence? It is not a hipster trend. It is a biological course correction. People are suffocating under the weight of digital nothingness, and they are grasping for anything heavy, anything real, anything that proves they exist in the physical world. Furthermore, immutable physical objects are our only remaining psychological anchors against the gaslighting of retroactive digital censorship and AI hallucination. When a streaming service quietly edits a scene out of a classic movie from the 1980s because it no longer aligns with modern corporate sensibilities, the digital version becomes the only version. If you don't own the physical disc or the original tape, the original art effectively ceases to exist. Your memory of it is gaslit by the digital present. Owning the physical artifact is the ultimate proof of reality. Can analog technology be used to heal an overstimulated nervous system? Yes, emphatically yes, because interacting with analog technology acts as one of the most effective tactile grounding techniques for anxiety. When you feel a panic attack coming on, or when the sheer volume of global digital news becomes too heavy to bear, holding something solid, mechanical, and predictable helps reset the vagus nerve. Your memory is fundamentally different when engaged with the physical world. Your memory is a vinyl record, and the tactile world is the needle that carves the grooves. Modern streaming is just a Bluetooth signal. It plays the song in the moment, but it leaves absolutely no physical impression on the wax of your brain. If you want to leave an impression on the wax of your own brain, you must reintroduce the tactile world into your daily routine. You must seek out the psychological benefits of physical media and embrace the friction it brings. But how do you do this practically? How do I start rebuilding a physical media collection without creating clutter? This brings us to the final myth we must destroy. The belief that physical media is just pointless, nostalgic clutter taking up valuable space in my house. It is not clutter. It is a carefully curated museum of your identity. It provides subconscious spatial grounding. To rebuild your collection without creating chaos, you do not need to buy thousands of movies or records. You do not need to hoard every tape you see at a thrift store. You must curate. You must select the top 20 albums that defined your adolescence, the 10 movies that shaped your sense of humor or your moral compass, the handful of books that changed the way you view the world. You buy those physical copies. You place them on a dedicated shelf. You create a physical shrine to the art that made you who you are. When you walk past that shelf, you don't even have to play the media to receive the psychological benefit. Just seeing those spines, recognizing those covers, sends a micro-signal of stability to your nervous system. It reminds you that your past is real, your taste is real, your identity is fixed, solid, and undeniably yours. We are the bridge generation. We remember the deep, quiet, analog piece of before, and we are currently surviving the chaotic, synthetic digital storm of the now. We have a unique responsibility to remember what it felt like to hold our culture in our hands. If you remember the smell of an independent video rental store on a Friday night, or the exact sound a cassette tape made when you hit rewind, I want you to share that specific memory in the comments below. Let us document the tactile reality of the world we survived. We will continue to explore the quiet psychological shifts of our generation. Next time, we will uncover the deep social loss behind the extinction of unannounced visits. Until then, find something real, hold it in your hands, and allow yourself to simply exist in the analog quiet.